Well, as a historian specialising in the Victorian age, what I find so fascinating about the period is how Britain suddenly expanded, the world expanded. Suddenly there were all these people crammed into London. They come from all over the country, all over the world, different nationalities, different classes, different people, and they were all crammed into this big city, and they were all doing things, they were all working, building, creating. It was this time of huge industry and huge activity, and at the same time it was a time of darkness and secrets, and behind those alleyways where everyone worked, there were strange things going on. My main character, Catherine, is trying to find her way in a world dominated by men, and I am fascinated by the voice of Victorian women because it's something that we don't often hear. The men have these voices, the men say how women must behave, but at the same time I became obsessed by real diaries and real letters, and there were all these Victorian women who pretend to be very saintly, but underneath they're seething with passions, and that was exactly how I felt of Catherine. She is, outwardly she looks very respectable, inwardly she's full of ideas, and she's determined to find the murderer, and by doing so she breaks many codes of the Victorian woman. She goes out by herself, she talks to men, she wanders the streets, all these things that could compromise her reputation, but she doesn't care because she wants to find out the truth about the killings. I think intuition is so important in the thriller plot, and I wanted to write this story about Catherine, a young girl who lives in Spitalfields, part of East London, a very old part of East London, in a ramshackle old house with her uncle. That in this house there's all this strange stuff and odd things, and she begins to be obsessed by the voices of history and obsessed by a murderer who's holding London to ransom, and she doesn't know what's happening, and it's her intuition, her obsession with what might be happening, that leads her into strange walks where she shouldn't go. And so I think the reader's intuition is really important. Who did it? Who didn't do it? Who's the one? And who is causing these murders that create such terror in England? It's so important to have the person investigating. This is why I didn't want to make my heroine a straight detective or a member of the police force. I wanted her to be a slightly damaged, slightly mysterious person, and Catherine is a very young girl who's in this house in London with her uncle. She's an orphan, she's got a strange secret in her past, and becoming obsessed by the murderer, obsessed with where he is. That's her way of trying to solve what's happening to London, these awful crimes that are terrifying people in 1840. But when she starts doing this, it really begins to enter her into terror and fear and a web of deceit much worse than she could ever imagine.